So when you open Autodesk Inventor, it usually brings up this welcome screen. Some people don't like it, so they just basically everything you can do here, you can do up here on what's called the ribbon. That's this top menu. But I always use this just because it opens up all the time. So the thing we're going to make today has a number of parts. So Autodesk has two main things that you build. You can build things called parts, and those are just like one single object. And then you can build things called assemblies. And assemblies are made of a bunch of different parts all put together. And that's how I'm planning to build this bench, is by building an assembly. So we're going to have a bunch of parts, and then we're going to assemble them. And typically, if you're going to do that, it makes sense to organize them all in what Autodesk calls a project. So that's the first thing I'm going to encourage everybody to do, is start a project. And the project automatically syncs all of your stuff together. To be honest, I'm not exactly sure all of what projects are capable of doing, but I always make one whenever I'm starting a new file. So if you click on Projects, and then you click on New, you can start a new project. Each of us, so Autodesk has this thing called the Vault, and that allows multiple people to work together on a single project and all access the same files. I'm not planning on using the Vault. I think the Vault also connects online and has everything stored online, and I don't exactly know how to use that. So I always use the single user project. Otherwise, if you're not connected online, it brings up errors and stuff. So I'm just going to use it as the new single user project. Click Next. I'm going to call this the James Simon Bench. You can call it whatever you want. And I'm also going to put it in a different folder. So, so you can see it defaults to the Tech Shop member documents Inventor folder. But one of the best ways to use Inventor here at Tech Shop is, instead of saving all of your stuff on the computer that you're using, because they wipe all the computers every night and you might not be able to get the same computer, is to work directly off of a USB drive. So if you have a USB drive, I would encourage you to do that. Otherwise, you can just do whatever. You can just save it there. But I'm going to run off of a USB drive. Hang on just a second. Oh, okay. I thought Tony had a question, but okay. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open up my thumb drive and make a new project folder. So I have this thing called Mike's Vault that I put all of my Autodesk projects into. So again, I'm going to call this the James Simon Bench.
If you don't have a USB drive, what should we save it?
So just save it to the default spot. That'll be fine. Hey, Tony, do you have a question?
No.
Just hanging out. Okay.
I'm just watching you guys do that.
No problem. I'm live streaming this to YouTube if you ever want to watch it later. I didn't see it in the search. You didn't see it in the search. So I don't know how to fix that.
What's your
let me pull it up here. It's double bit ax. It says it's DOUBLEBIT.
AX or AXE?
AXE. It says I'm live. I think it's a public one.
User. It's a channel. Yeah. Here we go.
Sweet. After the session, if you want, you can watch me playing the guitar kind of badly.
I'm excited.
So that'll be fun. Okay, so here what I've done, right? I've made a new project. I put it here on my thumb drive, and it automatically defaults to the new project when you make the new one.
YouTube doesn't see it. You're only sharing one window, not your whole desktop.
Right. Yeah, I told it to just.
Cool. It just isn't showing the dialogues.
Cool. Okay, so I'm done with that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new part. So I'm going to click on New here. It brings up a bunch of options in terms of what sorts of files you can make, right? So I said typically you make parts, but you can also make assemblies. You can also make drawings. So once we've built the parts, we might want to make an engineering drawing that we can then take to the welding area to make our choices.
From the Flash page where it says welcome, I already did the project. Just new and then.
There you go.
Okay. That's where we're at. Cool.
So is everybody following along so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to make a new part. It defaults to the English system parts. So if you just click on this, it's a English system. I usually like metric, but I'm going to use English this time.
And we want standard, not sheet metal?
Right, we want standard, not sheet metal. Yeah, so standard just makes like a regular old part. I've actually never used the sheet metal, but we are not making this out of sheet metal, right? So sheet metal would be for building a part that would like fold up into
oh, that's cool.
some sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, Inventor does some really neat stuff with sheet metal creation. Although I haven't actually done it myself, but I have seen some tutorials, and it's got some pretty neat functionality.
It can be a pain in the neck too.
Inventor can definitely be a pain in the neck. So I'm going to say one thing now while we're getting started with this. It's a good idea to save a lot while you're working with Inventor because Inventor is pretty buggy. It will crash relatively frequently. So try and make sure you save frequently because it'll be frustrating if you lose your stuff. So I'm going to create this new part. And when you create a new part, it opens up this blank workspace. Again, we have some things here on the workspace. We've got this thing on the top. This is called the ribbon. It has all of your various tools that you can use for doing your modeling. This thing on the left is called the model browser. It doesn't have very much in it right now, but as we create parts and features and things in our workspace, it'll populate this list. Here on the ribbon, you'll see there's also a bunch of tabs that do various things, but most of the actual modeling gets done in the 3D model tab, or when you create a sketch, which I'll do just quickly here. You create a sketch, it creates a new sketch tab here that you can also do most of your work in. So I'm going to Control Z that. So I am going to make a new sketch in a second, but are there any questions so far before I actually get started? Okay. So the first part that I'm going to make is the tubing frame that the seat is going to sit on. So I think the best way to build that is out of just structural tubing, square tubing, made of steel probably. So I earlier looked up the size of various tubings and how thick they are, but I didn't write it down, so I'm going to look it up again. So I looked it up on Metal Depot. I don't know exactly what size tube is best, but I think maybe 1.5-inch square tube, and I'll just say that we're going to use the thickest one available here because it'll be the most structurally sound. So it's 1.5 by 1.5 inches, and it's 0.120 inches thick. So,
Hey, Mike.
yes.
I'll just run out, and I forgot to mention this last time we all got together. We're talking about that tubing for the seat. How much does it take? Has anyone thought of contacting Port Authority to find out what type of tubing they use in their seats? Because I think they're rated for a minimum of 500 pounds.
I'm supposed to be doing the research on these kinds of things. I just need to make sure I know what all we're looking at talking about before I start doing that lookup. Because
I was just thinking about what kind of supports they use for their seats, because that could give us a good, pardon the pun, benchmark.
Oh my God, Rico. You're a punisher.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to know what they use, but one of the nice things is that Inventor will allow us to test the structural integrity of our stuff after we make it. So as long as we tell Inventor what the tube is made of, it'll know how strong it is. So we can fool around with all that after we've built the model. So Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create the cross section of that tube. So, right, if you were to look at the tube from the end, what does that look like? So here I'm going to click on Create New Sketch. It'll bring up this all these planes. So right, maybe you've already seen this, but this is just the three-dimensional space. The way you create stuff in Inventor is you make two-dimensional drawings and then you move those two-dimensional drawings through three-dimensional space. So I'm going to click on this plane here. This is the XY plane. And I'm going to start my sketch on that plane. So everybody do that pretty easily? Okay, so so the cross section of the tube is a square. So in order to draw a square, I'm going to use the rectangle tool and then just make both the sides the same. Rather than use the regular rectangle tool, this is called the two-point rectangle, I'm going to click on this down arrow. It's going to bring up a few other options. I'm going to use the two-point center rectangle. You could use the other one, but this one I think is the easiest for this particular purpose. So the way this works is you click on where the center of the rectangle is going to be, and then you can drag the rectangle to whatever size you want it. Wow. So I'm going to click in the center, drag up, and it's going to start making a rectangle. Now you could just click and it'll make that rectangle, and then you could go change the dimensions. But typically what I do is I just start dragging it, and then see how up on the top 0.701 is highlighted. If you type a number on your keyboard, it'll change that dimension. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want a 1.5 inch tubing. So I'm just going to type 1.5, hit Tab.
Wait, hold on. Where are you at this point?
Here, I'll go back. So I've got this two-point center rectangle tool.
Okay.
I clicked in the center on that point in the center, so that's the origin. And then I just dragged outward, but I didn't click.
I have the numbers in two different places. Those numbers you have in the two dimensions right there, they've shown differently.
Let me take a look. I mean, it's probably
different areas.
They are
equivalent to
different.
what's going
It's
on.
fine.
Okay.
Wait, so we're going,
Because you have moons at the top.
Oh yeah, so that's because you dragged down to the bottom. But if you had dragged up,
Or does it
it would just put it up on the top.
Okay.
Yeah. But it doesn't matter, right? That's just the length and the width.
So it's
1.25, I'm sorry.
So I'm going to do 1.5 inch tubing, but I could do any size. In fact, so one option I have is I can just type 1.5 like this, hit Tab. It'll bring me to my other one. I can say I want that to be 1.5 as well, and hit Enter, right, and it makes my tube 1.5 by 1.5. But that's probably not the best way to do it. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to show you a better way to do it. So that works. That's fine. But one of the really powerful features in Inventor is that you can name your dimensions, and then you can reference them later. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to Control-Z and make that again.
I think I lost my part. Oh, it's just too big.
Okay. So here I started over, right? I've used that rectangle again, and I've got that top dimension highlighted again. It'll automatically highlight one of the dimensions, and I'm going to change it. But before I type in the value, I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to call this the tube size. So I'm going to type tube size, and then I'm going to hit equals, and then I'm just going to choose the size, right? So it's going to be 1.5. And because we're in the standard system, it assumes that's inches. You could write inches if you want, but you don't have to. So I say tube size is 1.5. I'm going to hit Tab. So that moves me to my other.
I can't see the edge. Oh, there we go.
Come on.
Okay, so that's 1.5.
It's not getting it for some reason.
Wait, so we type in there tube size?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also Control-Z goes back.
And here's one of the reasons why that's useful, is now in this one, even if I've forgotten what I typed there, I mean, obviously I haven't forgotten it yet, but But I don't even have to remember what that size is. I can just now type tube size.
I'm just gonna make a new rectangle, because that did not work.
Yeah, it's not working either.
See, now I got a rectangle, but I don't
Whoa,
know.
something else
Jesus.
happened.
I don't know how to set my size.
Oh, I made a sketch, but I can't make a shape now.
I'm gonna come look at everybody's stuff.
Let's
I'm
try
so
this again.
confused.
Okay, so I click that, right?
Oh, here it is, okay. I found that.
Do you feel like the bus driver, a very short
Ah.
bus with a bunch of plastic?
No, I don't. I realize that everybody's.
I feel like, yeah, but I'm so confused.
My square wasn't
I
sent.
swear, I can't figure out how to,
So,
do my size.
so what you can do at this point is click this dimension tool, and then click on one of the sides, and then just drag up, and it'll allow you to change a new. Now,
So is there an equal sign? Tube size
Tube size, yeah, equal 1.5.
equals,
I tried typing in, I pulled up the size.
Yes.
Has it, it's not.
it will not be.
so you've got to hit equals. Tube size equals. Oh, and your names can't have spaces in them.
Ah,
Oh,
Yeah, so that's why I did mine tube
Tube size.
with the lowercase
I don't think
s
you have
for
to do
size.
1.5, I think it knows once you put it in once. Or,
my dimensions aren't long,
So
and yours is not either.
you know,
So once you create one of those, it goes into the parameter manager in Inventor, and you can reference it. But unfortunately, it doesn't go into the manager until you've created the shape. So if I try and type tube size here, it's not going to recognize that
Mine did.
that name. Oh, it did. So mine is not. I don't know why. Let me look at this one again. Yeah, I don't know why it's doing that. So, but mine is behaving badly. So I'm just gonna hit enter. It's gonna create these two sides, and now I'm gonna change this dimension.
Failed
So-
to create linear dimension. Variable name tube size is already used.
So did you make the shape and then make it again? Is that what happened?
I undid and then redid.
Oh, so I don't know why that happened. But probably what you can do now is just type tube size and not type the equals, and it'll just know how big tube size is already.
Nope, won't let me hit tab.
Okay, so let's try a completely different strategy. Another option is you can click on this button up here. That's the parameters manager, and it'll bring up a pop-up menu like this. And you can create your parameters before you even start sketching. So if I knew that I was going to use a 1.5 inch tube, I can just create that parameter and then reference it later.
Okay, so you got to that.
That's the F of X button up there on the top menu.
Oh, okay.
Alternately, if
Hold
you... Yeah, sure.
how do we get here again?
It's this button up here on the top, FX.
FX, okay. FX, there we go, right.
You can also get to it from the Manage tab.
So I'm seeing something totally different.
Yeah, because he has dimensions and you don't. He has these fancy things.
Yeah, so I've already created some dimensions, but
That's okay.
uh,
So for those of us who don't,
but if you don't, I mean, you should have the same window. It just might have some different stuff in it. But you can create new dimensions. So if I click Add Numeric, it allows me to make up things. Inventor calls these parameters. So for example, I already used tube size, so I'm going to use maybe tube width here. So that's the name of the parameter. And then I'm going to click here, and I'm going to say it's 1.5 inches. And hit enter. So now it's created a parameter called tube width. And if I ever want to reference how big that tube width is, I can just type tube width, and it'll automatically know what I'm talking about. Right? So I'm going to click done. I'm going to erase this sketch, and I'm going to make a new sketch. In fact, I'm going to just delete it entirely.
tube size and tube width. Sweet.
So here I'm going to make a brand new sketch. It's going to be the same as the old sketch, but again, I'm going to use the 2-point center rectangle. I'm going to drag this out. But now, instead of actually typing the dimensions here, I'm just going to write tube width. And Inventor already knows how big tube width is. So one thing that's true about Inventor is that there are lots of ways to do things. But it's very good practice to name your dimensions, either in advance if you know what they're going to be, or as you go along.
Okay, so I have to, when I undid, it undid my naming. So if I go into FX and wanted to make a parameter,
yep.
How do I do that?
Yeah, so if you click the FX and you bring up the menu, click on Add Numeric, and it'll bring up a new line there in User Parameters.
And equation equals 1.5, nominal value is 1.5, my tall is blue.
Tall.
Tolerance?
Oh, tolerance.
Mine is a blue circle.
So I don't know why it's doing that. I think you can just ignore any of the tolerance stuff. I don't know.
Okay.
We're not going to worry about tolerances in this design, because these aren't machined parts.
So I end up here. I'm trying to get dimensions all somewhere else.
Oh, your zoom is funny, and zoom is awful in this thing, from what I can tell.
So you can zoom in and out using the wheel, but it is a little bit hard.
Mine was panning with wheel. I had to change over to a zoom tool, and then
Somebody messed up your Inventor, I think.
Huh.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, yours seems to be doing a lot of weird stuff. Like, I don't know why this is blue on yours.
Oh no, it's yellow in the keys, but it's blue in the.
Oh, actually, up here on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't even seem like blue is an option according to the.
I agree.
And I'm assuming we can go in later on and change.
I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. What's that?
I'm assuming we can go in and change the name if we need to change the dimension name later.
So I don't know what happens if you change the dimension name. It might create a problem if one of the sides is trying to reference that name, because it might be looking for that name. But it might be okay. It might just update and know that it's got a new name.
Yeah, because I can highlight the name in parameter name, model parameters.
Yeah, well, let's do a test. Let's see what happens. So right now, these sides here are named tube width. So if I just change this, we'll see if it still can reference it. So I'll call this tube width 2 something. Yeah, so that seems to be fine. Okay. I'm going to change my name back, though, because that's not a good name.
I think blue means currently ending.
I think that's right, yeah, just because it's selected.
Okay.
Okay, so so that's the outside size of our tube. Our tube is also hollow, so we've got to create the inner part of the tube. So I could just make another rectangle the same way I did that one, but there's probably a better way to do it, and that's to use the offset tool. So that's right here in the modify section of the ribbon. So if you click on that, and then you click anywhere on this rectangle, I guess it's a square, but you know, whatever. It's behaving badly. Okay, so instead I've highlighted it, clicked offset. Oh man, I just did this before and it didn't do this. I don't know what it's doing.
So do you have the whole thing, or?
Which ribbon are you in?
Sketch.
Sketch.
No, because I'm looking at my square. looking at that.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I just did this before we started, and offset worked fine, but...
I mean, I made some fancy lines inside it that look like a grid.
Yeah, that's not what we want to do, right? We just want to make a smaller version inside it. But I don't know why. It's being buggy. So I guess I am just going to draw another square inside it.
Should we do that too?
Yes. So just draw another square or rectangle, whatever, right? It can just be anything. And we're going to dimension this in comparison to the other one. Right? So instead of giving each of these sides length, what we're going to do is we're going to tell them how close we want this side to be to this side. So in order to do that, I'm going to click on Dimension, and then I'm going to click on two parallel lines like this, and then drag that off to the side, and that will allow me to choose how close I want those lines to be. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
So you have that, your dimension, and that's as far as I've gotten so far.
Yeah, so once you click Dimension, you want to click on this top line and then this top line, and that'll allow you to set the spacing between those two lines.
All right.
So I did that. I dragged this off. As soon as you click, it's going to let you choose that dimension.
And that's 0.120.
Yeah. But again, it's probably a good idea to name this dimension. So instead of just typing 0.12, I'm going to call that wall thickness. So I'm going to type wall thickness equals, and then we're going to do 0.12. And that's going to make it so that spacing is that 0.12. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the vertical lines. So I'm going to click Dimension. I'm going to click on the two lines so that I can set the spacing between them. And then
It told me it would over-constrain, but that might be because I had it set as a square originally. Like, it matched diagonal lines.
oh yeah, so so it makes guesses as to what constraints you want. So yours is already finished. Yeah, but
Also, like,
but mine
does
didn't.
it-
What's that?
I'm trying to do this with the vertical lines right now, and it seems to.
No, you're just, there you go, see?
Oh,
It's all
already
the
there?
same. It's already there.
Okay,
You have
cool.
the same problem I do. You set the
Okay,
diagonals
gotcha.
the same, so
Yeah,
this
and that's-
assumes it's a square.
That's a great way to do it. Yeah, so it just already constrained the sides to be the same, but mine is not. So so I'm going to set that. So I'm ready to put in my dimension. Again, I could write 0.12, but instead I'm just going to reference wall thickness. And hit Enter, and it knows what wall thickness is. The advantage of doing it this way is that later on, let's say I decide I don't need 1.5-inch tubing. I can use 1-inch tubing. Right? I can just go back into my parameters. I can just change this from 1.5 to 1, hit Enter, and it's just going to rescale my whole drawing so that I've got the appropriate
So
size.
you do that in Inventor now?
You just open up the parameters menu,
Uh-huh.
go to the equation that tells you the size of that parameter, and just change it to whatever you want.
For each of them, or?
For whichever one you want to change, right? So in this case, I just said I want to try a different tube size. So I just changed it to 1, but I'm going to change it back to 1.5 because I think that's a good size.
Hey, Mike, I tried
Yes.
to enter in on that second parameter,
Uh-huh.
the wall thickness.
Yeah.
It didn't let me take, it didn't take it.
What did it say? It just did nothing? Or I'm going to come look at it.
Nope, it took it that time.
Worked, okay.
Maybe I misspelled it.
This thing still needs to go to. Okay. So this is what my tube is going to look like from the end. So like I said, I can change the size. I could also change the wall thickness. So let's say we decide we don't actually need the thickest possible tubing and we could get away with something thinner. We could just go in and change that wall thickness parameter and it would make all the changes for us. So anyway, so this is the tube. And we're just going to finish the sketch. So that's all we need to do for now. Okay, so this is going to become a long tube. So a lot of times what you do when you're using Inventor is you draw a sketch and then you extrude that. So there's this extrude thing here. You can choose some closed shape and it will extrude it out. So now you can see that sort of looks like a little bit of tubing.
Okay, so we have, how do I get from the 2D to the 3D again?
Did you finish the sketch?
How do I do that?
It's
Finish
top
sketch.
right hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to extrude.
Extrude.
We're actually not going to end up using the extrude tool, but I wanted to show it to you anyway.
Okay.
So there's
extrude tool.
there's a tool that's a lot like the extrude tool, but it's a little bit more powerful, and that's the one that we're going to use to do this. And I'm going to show you how to use it in a second. But I just wanted to get you started thinking about this. So normally you would extrude stuff, but this frame is going to be a big rectangle, so you can only extrude in one direction. So there's another tool called the sweep tool that allows you to extrude not just in one direction, but along a shape. So so that's the sweep tool. It's right here. But in order to use the sweep tool, we need to know what shape to sweep across. So we're going to make that shape before we can actually extrude this this sketch. So so I'm going to close out the extrude tool.
Okay, something happened to me.
Oh no, you're just in a slightly different view. Here. So this is like a big crazy cube. We're here.
Yeah, now try using the sweep thing. It's not a sweep at all.
Yeah, because you need to make a new sketch for that. Yeah, that's where I'm at, and that's where you're at. Same place.
Maybe now would be a good time to talk about the view screen a little bit, because yeah, I guess some of you have not had a lot of time to play with it. So there are a number of ways that you can adjust your view. A lot of people use these tools up in the right-hand corner. So this thing's called a view cube, and you can click on it and drag it around, and that changes your view. You can also just click on faces, and it'll switch to that face. Or you can click on edges like this, and it'll like that, and it'll give you like a view from that edge. It's sort of hard to tell what's going on here because this is a one-dimensional shape. You can click on corners, and it'll give you views from the corner. I don't typically use that. The way I like to navigate is using the F2 and F4 keys on your keyboard. If you press and hold F2 and then left-click anywhere on the screen, it allows you to drag your image around.
Well, I just did I drew a line.
Were you holding down F2?
Yeah.
You have to hold it for like a second.
Oh, I was also I was right-clicking.
Oh, right-clicking. I don't know what happens. Oh, so right-clicking allows you to bring up these pop-up menus, and I don't use them. They're probably pretty handy, but I just haven't found them.
F2 and right-click and then drag. It creates this like weird ass.
You don't even need to hold down F2.
Oh, really? Just right-click it.
Yeah.
This makes it
So these are called pop-up menus, and they're gestural. So like depending on what you do, it'll bring up a different menu. So
They're really good if you have like the thing with the pen.
oh yeah. But in any case, I don't use them because I just don't know what they all do. If I did a lot of drafting, I would probably get comfortable with those, but I'm happy with the way I use Inventor. Okay, so anyway, so that's F2, right? So you hold down F2, left click, that's the regular mouse button, right? And you can drag it around. If you want to look at it from a different angle, press and hold F4.
It's crazy.
And it'll bring up these crosshairs. And if you click inside the circle, it'll spin you around sort of free transforming. Right? So it's just like you've grabbed a hold of your shape, and as you move around, it spins you around. If you want a little bit...
oh, here we go. Now I have it.
Yeah, so that's if you click, again, inside this circle. If you want a little bit more precise control over the way you move around,
That's fine.
if you hover over one of these horizontal lines on the two sides, that'll cause you to spin just around the vertical axis.
It's like it's dancing.
Right, so it'll spin you. It's sort of hard.
Right
Let me.
round, baby, right round.
So it'll spin it just like that, right? If you click on the vertical lines, it'll spin you around that horizontal axis. And if you click anywhere outside that's not on those lines, it'll spin you around left.
You were
you know,
from the left,
clockwise
right,
and
on right, top, on
Bingo.
top.
There, yes. I was close.
You were very close.
And then the scroll wheel will scroll you in and out. And it scrolls you around the point that your mouse is on, or something. It's kind of hard to control the scrolling in and out. In my opinion.
It stays like, constant.
Center of the scroll, the wheel button, you press that and you can drag it across. Shift and Control, you can rotate.
Right. That is another thing. And what those do, if you click your center scroll button, that just looks at the particular shape that you're looking at. Whereas the F4 will spin you around the whole object, even if some of it's off the screen. So they'll spin you around different points. But that is another way, right? So instead of F2 and F4, you can hold down the scroll wheel, and that'll do stuff. Right? So with Inventor, there are like just a ton of ways to do the same thing. So whichever way you like is probably fine 99% of the time.
One of the reasons I brought that up is if you press the shift and the center scroll button, that can get out of control real quick.
It can.
Because it just starts rotating on all axes at the same time.
Yeah. So you're saying you don't like that? Not as
Some
much.
things, but I like what you just showed us because of the better control we have over exactly what it's going to do.
Cool. Yeah, that's the way I always use. I think it's probably the simplest way to navigate. Some people pretty exclusively use the navigation cube, but I don't really like it anyway. You can also use various things over here. Like if you click hand, that's like holding down F2, except you don't actually have to hold it down.
It'd be cool if there was like a make. You could like lock in with that.
Yeah. And if you click this one, it'll just zoom you to fit the whole object in the screen. Right, so that's zoom all. I think there are hotkeys for that as well, but I don't remember what they are. And if you click this one, it brings up this additional menu that, again, does all the same stuff as the other one, but I never use it, so I can't really tell you very well how to use it. But anyway, so that's how to navigate a little bit of the view screen. And you just kind of have to do it until you get comfortable. There's, I can tell you how to do it, but it won't really make much of an effect on you, I think, until you've actually practiced. So, okay, any questions so far? Okay, so we've got our cross section. We need to figure out the path that we want to sweep it along. Before I actually start making that sketch, I'm going to choose how big I want my bench to be. So again, I'm going to go into my parameters manager, and I'm going to create some new parameters. So I'm going to click Add Numeric, and maybe I'm going to call the bench width. So that's going to be like, if you're looking at the bench from the front, left to right, I'll call that bench width.
Again, no spaces?
Yep, no spaces. You can't have spaces in these. You could use underscores if you like. I have a lot of experience programming in MATLAB, and the sort of standard procedure in MATLAB is to make your first letter lowercase, and then each additional word, the first letter uppercase. So that's how I do this, just because it's what I'm comfortable with.
And so for width, are we talking like the length of the seat or the depth of the seat?
This is the length of the seat. You can call it whatever you want.
I wanted to make sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna call depth. I'm gonna call the other one bench depth. So the bench width. Katie, do you have a preference for how big?
If the ones are 72, we were going to lengthen it due to the backboard or scale the backboard down. So. Okay.
Well, so here, again, one of the nice things about this is we can just go ahead and change it later if we want to. But I'm going to say
72 will work.
72. Okay, so we're going to say it's 72 inches. In fact, so I put 72 inches here. I'm actually going to erase that real quick. Inventor's pretty smart when it comes to units. So I could write 72 inches, but I could also say that I want it to be 6 feet. Right, so I can just type 6 feet, hit enter, and it knows that 6 feet is 72 inches. So see how it's calculated the value over there. So I could also put that in millimeters or meters or miles. Pretty much any standard size, Inventor will be able to.
And typical bench depth, like seat depth, is 18.
18. Yeah. So
1.5.
I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger than that, so that we can put some brackets on the seat.
What? Oh, no,
Yeah, I know.
so you add it all in there.
I did that all in there. But I was getting back into it, now we're all here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
This is how you create them under user parameters, which is things you enter in here. Everything else is things that derive from the naming out here.
Gotcha. Alright. Alright, so, alright, is everything?
You're adding bench length and bench depth.
Okay.
Are we gonna add like 4 inches for the bracket extension?
Yeah, so I'm gonna include that in my bench depth. So yeah, I'm gonna say, yeah, maybe we're gonna add an extra 4 inches. So if we want the seat to be 18 inches deep, we're gonna call bench depth 22 inches. In fact, so I could just type 22 inches, right? I could do the arithmetic in my head, but you don't even have to do the arithmetic in your head. Again, Inventor will do that for you. So I'm gonna say I want the actual seat to be 18 inches, plus I'm gonna add an extra 4 inches for the brackets. And I'll just say that, and it'll automatically calculate that for me. Right, so later on, if I want, I can go ahead and change that. Another option I have, so actually I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to add a new parameter. You don't have to do this, but I'm just showing you one of the functionalities here.
So the length, the bench length is 72 inches, the bench depth is 22?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Exact, kind of. He's doing this.
Yeah. So this is what is called parametric modeling. That's why Inventor is called a parametric modeling software, is that it allows you to reference parameters like this. So I'm going to make a parameter that I'm going to call bracket depth.
Who's on their phone?
It's not high.
I just hear all these beeps.
So I'm calling bracket depth 4 inches. And then what I can do is I can reference bracket depth inside my equation for the seat depth. So I can call seat depth.
Or bench as.
Yeah, bench. I can call that. I can say that's going to be 18 inches plus bracket depth.
Nice.
So everybody see what I did there? Right? And it'll know what that is. Right? So it's calculated it here, 22 inches. And this way, if I decide I don't need such big brackets later on, I can just change my bracket depth, and it'll automatically change the model so that it has the appropriate bench depth.
I like it.
Any questions so far? We can. Okay. So those are the parameters I need to know. I'm going to click done. Now they're saved, and I'm going to actually sketch out that rectangle that's going to make the bottom of the frame. So I'm going to. I'm currently still in my old sketch. I'm done with that sketch though, so I'm going to click finish. I'm going to create a new sketch. So I'm going to click on Create 2D Sketch. And I want to create a sketch not in the same plane that I drew that cross-section in. I want it in the horizontal plane, right? Which is, in this case, the XZ plane. Right, does that make sense? Everybody okay with that? So I'm going to click on that plane, and it's going to have me looking. So you can see here on the view cube that I'm looking down on it from the top. And I'm going to create a rectangle that this is going to sweep through. So I'm going to. So in this case, I don't want to use the 2-point center rectangle. I want to use just the regular 2-point rectangle tool. So I switch to that. I'm going to drag a rectangle through that sketch. So I'm actually going to change my view a little bit so that you can see what's going on here. So now I'm not looking directly down at the top. I'm looking sort of at an angle from the top, so you can see that cross section, and then my rectangle. Now, obviously, this rectangle is much too small right now because this space here is only 1 inch wide. But we're going to just change these dimensions. But before I do that, I want to constrain this line to go through this center point. So the way I do that is I click on this coincident constraint tool. So click on that, and then click on this line, and then click on this origin point. And it's going to force that to go through the origin.
Coincident constraint.
That's this top left-hand constraint.
Okay.
Okay.
That line?
And
Instead of putting the thing.
there. Great. Now,
I am.
Not there? I'll come take a look.
Do you have a rectangle out here?
Yeah, that looks good. We're going to change the rectangle dimensions in a second.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so you want to start a new sketch.
oh Jesus, my rectangle is the size of a
And then
monster.
click on this plane here.
So with it open.
Can I delete that?
Sketch.
Control Z.
Yeah. Control Z is becoming
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, no, my server is too far out. That's why.
So we did the 2-point from the center. You did it to the right.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but
I zoomed out here.
yeah, you can zoom out a lot. You can zoom out
I accidentally
to the
zoomed out
scale
the
of the universe. Yeah, it doesn't care. Right? It's just mathematical. You can zoom out until it's probably bigger than the size of the universe.
I ran out of grid. That's what my problem was.
Okay, so so now I want to set the dimensions of the rectangle. So I'm going to click on the dimension tool up here. Then I'm going to. So there are a lot of ways that you can go about dimensioning this, right? I can just dimension it by clicking on one of the edges like that. I could also dimension it by clicking on 2 opposing parallel lines, and I can dimension it that way. In this case, because it's a rectangle, it's going to do the same thing. I like to do it using the 2 opposing lines because sometimes if you want to like change this edge, it won't know what to do. Whereas we always want these to be the same distance apart. So I'm going to click on those. I'm going to click up here, and it's going to allow me to choose how big that's going to be. So because we're looking at the top and this is the left to right dimension, this way I want this dimension to be my bench width. So I'm going to type bench width. But I've got to be a little bit careful because notice that my tubing sticks out 1/2 inch on this side. And as it sweeps around, it's going to stick out 1/2 inch on the other side as well. So if I just make this path here the bench width, then my actual bench is going to be 1 inch too wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that this is the bench width minus the tube width.
So wait.
So that's going to subtract 1 tube width from the total bench size.
So it's 2 width minus bench width?
That's right. Or bench width minus tube width. Right. And
So it cannot be evaluated.
So it'll be 69.
so you might have your.
You have to check, it's the things you named in the dimensioning, in the FX before.
Yes.
Yeah, if you don't remember the names of those dimensions, a way you can get to them is I'm just going to clear that line. I'm going to click on this arrow to the right, and then I'm going to click on List Parameters.
Oh, I have no bench width, that's why.
Did you guys see what I did there? I'll do it again. So if you make this blank and you click on the arrow key, and then click on List Parameters, it'll bring up the names of all of your parameters that you've defined so far.
Yeah, I realized this, that the reason it wasn't listening to me was because I had no bench width.
Oh, okay.
So
I think I need to clarify something. The way that you have it up on the screen is the way I have it on here, but it looks like what we're going to be doing is widening, not lengthening the tube.
Why do you not like that?
It's not going to extrude it, it's going to
So this is going to extrude it, but what it's going to do is it's going to extrude it down, and then it's going to turn the corner. It's going to extrude along this side. It's going to turn again. It's going to extrude up along the top. Turn again, extrude. Turn again, and extrude. So it's going to build a big rectangle made out of extruded tubing.
Okay, so I need to backtrack a little bit because I think I missed a step that's relatively important.
So I wasn't looking at the down part of it.
So here, let me show you what it does. So I'm not gonna constrain these dimensions yet. I'm just gonna show you what happens when we extrude it, so you see what the point is of the extrusion. So so when I go to, so we call this the sweep. So I click on sweep. Profile is automatically selected. So profile, that's the thing that's actually going to be doing the sweeping. So I'm going to click on this section that's bounded between the two rectangles. And then once you've clicked on a profile, it'll automatically select path. So then I'm going to click on this path, and it's going to extrude it around that path. So, so see what it's done. It's created a rectangle made out of tubing. This is quite a small rectangle, obviously. Do you see what's happened? Is it clear?
Okay.
I got
so
it.
I did that to an
Crazy
extent.
balls.
However, it doesn't let me hit OK.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those big bubble makers that you bend it.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't let me hit OK.
Let me take a look. So where is your?
Here.
Oh, there it is. Okay, so click on sweep again.
F2. So sweep.
So you've got to choose the profile. So yeah, click there, and then it changes the path automatically.
And then.
So since you clicked on path again, it's unselected. So click it again, yeah, and then click on this line, and that'll sweep you through that whole rectangle.
Okay, so I'm not fast here yet.
Yeah, this is a good spot to be.
Okay.
Yeah, so
So we realized that-
I'm actually going to go back into the sketch.
The
So
original one, this one right here, I never did never used the bench names because like the parameters I have for that are these are bench depth and bench length. I never did bench width. What was that?
so I think that's
Yeah.
I call bench
So,
length bench
You're
width.
trying to
Okay.
figure out.
But you can call it bench length, so you name it bench length. So that's fine, just as long as you know what your
Because
parameters.
Like, there are lots of
I have
conflicting
made
things
too much
online.
of the setting. It was
So
one I'm missing.
we're
That's
not
right.
quite
Okay.
sure
So
what to do
with the dimensions
with all that.
that
So, like,
said it
for
couldn't be evaluated
example,
because it couldn't.
hold on a second.
So it would be bench length minus.
For example, I
bench
should
depth.
like red at all.
So you're
That's
gonna
not
want
possible. We're also going to negative numbers.
you're gonna want bench length minus tube width.
Okay.
All right, now, I've got the suite window open. We're checking path. What it defaulted to, just path.
So it automatically defaults to profile. Then when you choose a profile, it switches to path and lets you choose the path.
It's just a hit sweep this came up.
So you need to have two sketches at the same time. So I think you've only got the one sketch.
Okay, still
I
at
was gonna say if you've got two, but I don't see the second sketch.
two.
You double click sketch two.
Exact same thing. And it still doesn't let me do this.
So this sketch is supposed to have a rectangle in it somewhere, but you just haven't drawn it. That's good. And we're going to change those lengths in a second. But you want to make sure that this line here goes directly through the center point. So in order to do that, you use this constraint there. Yeah. Click that line and then click the origin point. In fact, what you can do, click this line.
The vertical.
Yep. And then click this thing that says center point, and that'll automatically make it go through. So that seemed to do it. Yeah, so that's right in there. So that's good.
I have to admit, when we first started doing the first initial rectangle, I was right up there with everybody. And
Whoa,
something happened, I
something
had to go back and restart. And I clicked on 2-point rectangle and didn't notice that. So all I did was focus and try and fix it. I'm so far behind. I'm so lost.
You're not that far
Just,
behind.
this is, like, I
Into shock of the blue.
just feel like
Yeah, so I'll catch you up.
no, I don't want to take away from what you guys are all doing. But in trying to catch up, I got further and further behind.
Dude, you weren't that far back away from where I was when I called. It takes a step.
Yeah, you're only like two steps away. I'll just do it real quick for you, and then you'll be caught up. So we need to set this dimension between these two tubes. So please see if you've already named the dimension. Got it.
So the ones I had to go back and restart, it was easy to just go. Actually, when I didn't realize.
Are we on a break?
2-point.
Also,
Yeah. And you can make either type of rectangle work.
Yeah, so use patience in figuring out this rolling. See?
Well, I know where these things are now, but I was wondering, how did they just get so, could be massive?
Just
Yeah, I mean, if you want
scrolling
to
issues,
cross it along-
because
Yeah, that's what I have.
scrolling is awful.
That's okay.
No, it's not that. So I put,
You can do that too.
That's
Not
that's
fun.
two width, this is what happened.
That's because that's the right scale.
Really did that?
Yeah, here.
Unfortunately, this is probably
Like,
You know what,
not
I do that small.
for beginners. This is probably
Let me-
for people who are sort of intermediate
I don't want to do
already.
master.
But this is just the project that I need to get done. So this is the one.
No, that's okay.
That'd be a question.
That's why I said I'm not sure.
All right, so if I could go back to that view.
But it had, I cannot make that mistake. I really didn't probably with that.
See how small sketch was?
Okay. It's that tiny little thing on the side?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
that little square that was open here.
Gotcha, okay.
That's fine. You just have to make sure you get your both bench dimensions taken care of.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna get a soda. Waterloo, well, that's a statement. Well, water.
We'll get water down.
Okay, so it looks like everybody's taking a break. So I'm gonna wait till people get back.
I have food in the car, should I go?
If you want to, I guess. I left my lunch in my car too, but it's like
I
a quarter
just hate to
mile.
do it,
away,
but
so.
I'm so far gone right now, it just.
Yeah, I mean, I admit this is definitely not ideal for beginners.
I got a girl with a very wide cut shirt, keeps bending down right at my corner of my peripheral vision, there's glass there. That's just adding insult to injury.
Okay, so I'm going to continue. So I'm going to go back into this sketch that in mine is called Sketch 3. It's the one where I drew that rectangle that I'm going to sweep the tubing along. I'm going to go back into that sketch, and I'm going to set the bench, what I call the bench width and the bench depth. So I'm going to double-click on my dimension, and I'm going to type in bench width. But remember, this is sweeping around the middle of the tube. So if I just say bench width, then my whole bench is going to be an extra tube width too wide. So I'm going to subtract off the tube width. And I'll show you, if it's not super clear, I'll show you why that's true in a second. So
Only one tube width, not two?
just one, because let me.
It's 2 halves equal 1.
Right, it's 2 halves, right? So I'm only adding a half of an extra width on this side, and then an extra half
We'll
on the
overlay
other
that,
side.
okay.
Yep.
So 70.5?
Let's see. So
That's what I
let me
got.
scroll out. Yep, 70.5. And then I need to do the same thing in the vertical on the screen right there. So that's front to back or depth. So again, I'm going to click on the top and bottom parallel lines here.
Okay, I'll just,
And then this is going to be the bench depth. Again, I'm going to subtract off the tube width.
And what did we come up with the same? What value did you put in?
So I originally chose my bench depth to be 22 inches. So when it calculated it to be 20.5.
so wait, which lines are we setting right now?
So that was the top and bottom.
Okay, so the top and bottom. Those 2 lines. Okay.
So I don't know exactly how yours looks once you did that, but notice what happened on mine was that when it shortened it, it kept this bottom line at the same spot, and it just pulled this top line down.
But what's the dimensions for the top and bottom lines?
So they have a length of 70.5.
That's what I have.
Yep. And then the depth should be 20.5.
Okay.
So hit escape for me. So this one, I'm going to move it so you can understand it a little better.
Okay.
Will be that. Then we're going to select these two. So you can hold shift to select multiples. And then dimension. See, does the same thing. So hit escape for me again. So this time we're going to do this line and that line. Dimension. And there, this one's the one where you have to put that other bench minus 2.
Alright, so it's bench depth minus
Tube width, I think.
Yeah, for some reason, my 70.5.
Okay, so that was that size.
Right on top
That's
of
right.
that. See how you've got the in your dimension line?
And we're gonna
Yeah, you can move this. I just dragged it up so that
Well,
you can
that's
see it.
mine's like
move this up.
right above the green line, and it's not the way I originally did it.
Yeah, it just moves it around as the stuff changes. I don't know exactly why.
So I didn't screw it up, basically.
No, you didn't screw it up. It just tries to guess a good spot for it, and sometimes it does a good job, and sometimes it
The
doesn't.
dimension's the same, it's just the way they laid that dimension line.
Yeah, yeah, but you can just move that around. That dimension line means, I mean, very little except for the information that it tells you, but it can live anywhere. Okay, so but notice that what happened here is when I changed that depth, it pulled that top line down so that it's no longer intersecting that that tube profile that I made. So I need to move this rectangle so that it is intersecting that. So if you just click on it and drag it up, it'll drag it back so that it's going through that profile. Do you guys see what I did there? What's that?
I need to drain the whole rectangle.
So just click on any of the sides and it'll allow you to move it around.
See, it didn't let me do that, but if I clicked on the corner point, it did.
Yeah,
It snapped right to the center.
That is very strange. Right? I mean, so as you use Inventor, it
Yeah, it's not
guesses a lot of constraints for you. And yours might be guessing constraints differently than mine is, so yours might just be behaving differently.
Yeah, because like for some reason I can't move it.
You can't get yours to move
Just
at all.
being angry with it.
Well, it's probably from how we set the center point constraint.
Yeah, it's definitely possible that it's triggered it. So yours is actually fine already because it's already going through.
It's already set. It's already centered. Like
Yeah.
you should it's okay from every angle.
It looks okay. Yeah.
All right, sure.
Yeah. So that looks good. Did you set this?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Just, I don't know how to get it to move down here.
Okay, so you're using the hand tool, so that moves your whole view space. I'm gonna hit escape.
Yeah, I got it.
That's good. Yeah. So if you click on that top line, it's not gonna let you. Well, maybe it'll let you move it a little bit.
There we go.
Oh boy.
Okay, so you need to set that length as well. Yeah. So you've already created the dimension, so you just need to edit the size.
Okay.
So just double click on that number, 55.98, and then you can change that size. So if you're using the like the parameter names, that's just like bench depth or something minus bench or tube width.
Okay.
Okay.
Because, all right, well, yeah. I was to ask you, figure out how to move it again, but apparently it moved itself.
So a good practice when you're making sketches is to fully constrain the sketch, which means that things can't move around, right? So like, for example, I can move this around. And sometimes it's fine to leave it like that, but a lot of times you want to make it so that can never move around.
Because apparently that's how I constrained it, to constrain itself to the center point.
Right. Yeah, so my sketch here is considered an unconstrained sketch, or not fully constrained. And you can tell how many more constraints you need to add by looking down here. So this one says I need one more dimension in order to constrain it. And the one I'm going to use is I'm going to constrain the center point of this line to that center point as well. I could constrain it in any ways, but that's the one I'm going to choose. So again, I'm going to click on the coincident constraint, and I'm going to find the center point of that line like that, and then I'm going to click on that center point of the other sketch, which also happens to be the origin, and that's going to make it so those 2 points live in the same space. And now you can see that my sketch is fully constrained. So that means no matter where I click and drag, it won't let me move
Is
anything.
that what I have here?
Also, when things become fully constrained, the lines become blue. When they can be moved, they're
There's like
green.
2 green lines.
So that means that it is not fully constrained. It doesn't need to be, but it's nice for it to be constrained. So you still need one dimension. So what you can do is if you click on this line, it'll allow you to drag this rectangle back and forth. Yeah, see,
Okay.
so we want to prevent that. So just click off, so click here on the coincident constraint, and then find the middle of this line. If you just run along the line, yeah, just drag your mouse along it towards the middle, and when you get to the middle, it's going to bring up a green dot. So the middle, it looks like the middle's about there. Yeah, so it'll bring up a green dot. So click that dot, and then click that center point there. Yeah. You might want to scroll in so you can find it.
There it is. This one?
Yeah, just click there. And now it is fully constrained.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm having a problem over here.
Okay.
I just need to get it to be, like, here's my first sketch right here.
Uh-huh.
How do I get it to move over and be?
Yeah, so you've got the same trouble. Can I
Yeah.
borrow your mouse? So the problem that you have is that you don't have you don't have the sketch constrained in this direction, right? You can slide the rectangle back and forth. And it's fine, actually, but we're going to fully constrain it because that's good practice. So in order to constrain it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so the center of this line falls right on that point there. So I'm going to click on the coincident constraint. And then if you just drag your mouse along this line, when you get to the center, that little green dot appears. So that's the midpoint. Click on that, and then click on this yellow dot there, and it'll pull that to the center. And now it says that it's fully constrained, which means that no matter where you click and drag, nothing's going to change shape or move.
Before you head back to this,
Yeah.
all I'm showing is that rectangle. I'm not showing.
Yeah, so I can see the other one right. No, actually, it's here. So you just can't see it because you're looking at it from the top. So if you, I'm going to press F4, drag up just a little bit so that we can click inside this region. Yeah, so there's the other one. Yep.
Actually, I tried doing that with the rotation from here. I tried to do that from there. Well, I was on the inside. I was on the outside.
Okay, yeah. So yours might have a problem. I don't know what's going to happen when we get to this point, but because you're on the corner, it might have a problem sweeping in from this side. Whereas if you start on the side, like in the middle of this line, it's going to sweep around that.
So I think we constrained it to the center point.
Yeah, I constrained it to the center point. That looks like it's constrained to the corner points. This is a little bit tricky. I'm going to kind of use your mouse. So there's going to be a constraint here that forces this to be on the corner. I'm going to try and find that constraint and get rid of it. So if you press F8, it brings up all the constraints. I'm afraid I can't solve that problem. I can't see those constraints. That's really weird. They normally are always the same size, no matter how zoomed in or zoomed out you are. Yeah, that's a problem I don't know how to solve.
Okay. That is.
And as you zoom in, they stay the same size. There's something wrong with the settings, I think. But I'm afraid I can't solve that problem.
Go away. I think we're down here.
I mean, the constraints are already open. Let's see if it works. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Maybe it'll be fine.
I think they're listed down here too. Is that something? You've got something going on right here.
Yeah, those are the constraints that apply to that line. But again, we just can't see that because they're so small. And I don't know why they're making them so small. I've never seen that happen before. Kitty, what time is your Inventor or Illustrator
I
thing?
am available whenever anybody needs it. His is at 2.
2, okay.
You're all welcome to, you need to reschedule that for a couple months from now.
I think that people's attention spans aren't going to last super long for this particular session, so.
I'm really proud of everyone for hanging in there as well.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
I get a little distracted, and I started going into the appearances thing, and like water bubbles and walnut. And
That's fine, I guess.
But
Okay,
no,
so
I want to learn how to sweep this, so I can so I can make this out of water.
yeah, so we're ready to sweep. So it's time to use the sweep command. I'm going to finish this sketch that I was in. And now notice the 3D model tab is the one highlighted.
Yes.
So I'm ready to sweep. I'm going to click on sweep here. It's going to bring up this pop-up menu. Notice that automatically the profile button is selected. So I'm going to zoom in on the profile I want to sweep out, right, which is this closed area between the two squares. I'm going to click on that.
Where is it?
Okay.
Here it is.
And as soon as you click on that profile, it automatically switches to path. And so now path is the selected one. So you just then have to click on the path you want to sweep it across. You don't have to click up here. You just click on the path. And it will sweep it along. So yours worked, Ringo?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So here I have swept out that tube.
Almost again. So I have the sweep command, and I want to hit the center point of the original rectangle. I'm trying to do.
Have you already selected the profile?
No, I have not.
So you want to click anywhere in the space between the two
Like right here.
squares that we drew. Yeah, just click there.
Okay.
Right, so that's the profile, and then click. Right, so it's already selected path.
Okay.
So then just click on the path. Yeah,
Yes.
click there. Yeah. And it's going to sweep it through that whole thing.
All right. So now what did I do?
And then you can just click OK. That's right. It's just zoomed in, so it looks kind of funny.
Oh.
So there are a bunch of options here in the sweep. So notice there's this thing called the orientation, and that will sweep so that your profile is perpendicular to the path you're sweeping along. You could also click parallel. It's not going to work very well in this case. Yeah, it's actually not going to work at all in this case. But what parallel does is it doesn't turn that profile as it goes along the path. It just keeps it in the same plane, but still sweeps it along some path. But in this case, that doesn't really do anything. So I'm just going to hit OK, and now I've got this rectangle of tubing that is going to represent the base. So that'll go underneath the seat. Now, if we just wanted it to look like a seat, we wouldn't have had to go through all the work of making that square tubing. But we actually want this to represent what the actual shape is going to be, because we're going to do some structural analysis of it later. That said, what I want to do is I want to choose what material this is going to be made out of. And in order to do that, I'm going to go up here to this material choice drop-down menu.
Where's that?
It's up on the very top. It says default.
All right.
And default is just like this magical material that everything gets automatically made as per, totally virtual. If I click on it, it's going to bring up a real long list of potential things I can change it into. Right, so I could say that I'm going to make it out of gold, for example, and that would be a very expensive bench. Also not a very durable one. So instead, I'm going to scroll until I find steel. And there are lots of different steels.
Yeah,
but I'm just going to click on just
Generic
regular steel.
just steel, right?
Yeah. And Autodesk has a number of properties that it knows about for steel, like the strength of steel. There are lots of engineering-y things that people have learned about how steel behaves. And Autodesk knows about those properties. So when we do an analysis later, it'll know this is made of steel, and it'll know how it's supposed to behave. Right? So it, for example, knows the weight and the strength and the yield strength and the all various things, stiffness and whatnot. So so now this is the frame. We probably are also going to want to add some additional supports. So I don't know exactly the best place to put them. I'm going to say maybe we should put maybe 3 bars that go from front to back. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a new sketch. And I'm going to create that sketch on one of these inner surfaces. So I'm going to click there, and it's going to create a sketch there. Did everybody do that?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Now notice that front part of the tubing is blocking me from seeing that sketch, but I can't see it. So if you hit F7, that's the slice graphics hotkey, and that'll slice everything in front of your sketch away. So now I can see through to that sketch.
Right. How did you get to that one again? Because I was looking at something.
Okay, so I'll go back a little bit. So I'm going to create a new sketch, and I'm going to create a sketch on one of these inner edges because I'm going to draw tubes and I'm going to extrude them. I'm going to draw a tube here and I'm going to extrude it to this tube or to this front one. I'm going to do the same thing here and the same thing here. So I want to make a sketch on this surface here. So I'm going to click Create 2D Sketch. I'm going to click on that surface and it's going to create a sketch plane for me to work on. But see, it's put this other tube in the way. I can't see my sketch. And in fact, even if I drew on that sketch plane, you wouldn't be able to see it, right? Because that other thing's in the way. So if you press F7, that's called the slice graphics. It'll get rid of all the stuff in front of that sketch plane so that I can see.
Now, one thing I do want to point out with the benches being used, we have to consider where we're putting those supports and the fact that when people start sitting on it over time, the seat itself is going to begin to form. If we put a support under offset to where people can sit, it's going to make an uneven surface if you're sitting.
The project for public spaces estimates that a seat is 24 inches and a 72-inch bench will seat 3 people.
So we should have 2 supports in between where they would be sitting.
Okay, we can do that. I think that what we make the bench surface out of is probably not going to deform very much because we're going to make it out of steel. But it's a since it doesn't actually matter how many supports we have at the moment, I'm happy to change it and do it differently. So.
Let's say even when people sit down on it, it doesn't form anything. It's going to rebound.
Yeah, it will a little bit, but I just think it's probably, we will find that it's not enough that people would notice it. But that said, I'm happy to do just 2 supports because I just picked 3 sort of arbitrarily. So
I'm using myself as an example, and I've noticed when I sit down, say I sit down abruptly on a bench, I can feel when I sit down where the supports are underneath.
Even a metal bench? Is there? Okay, well, so...
of course, you're looking at 300 pounds, so like I said, I'm just trying to cover the extreme spread, shall we say?
Sure, yeah.
So don't call.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw 2 more profiles that look like the same tubing profile that I drew before. In fact, yeah, I'm going to draw 2 of them, right? So I'm going to draw a rectangle here, and notice if you click near this line and then drag down to near the bottom line, it'll automatically snap so that it is, in line with those. Right? Do you guys see what I mean?
Yeah. All right, there we go.
Yeah. So Inventor's trying to guess that I want my lines to be parallel to those lines, or not parallel, right? In line with those lines. So it guesses that constraint, and I'm going to let it choose that because I do in fact want that to be true. I still need to set the width dimension though, and there are many ways to do that, but I think the best way to do it is to just call that, again, the tube width. So that makes that the outer tube dimension. Notice though, I still have 1 dimension needed because I can slide this left and right. It's not constrained yet, but I'm not going to constrain it yet. I'm going to draw the other one first.
You can just Control-C, Control-V, I believe. I know you can copy.
Yeah, no, I just...
Yeah, you can copy it. There are lots of ways of getting this over there. You can also use this pattern tool, which will make a pattern. But since I only need 1 more, I'm just going to draw another one. And I'm going to dimension it. I also need to add those inner walls. So I'm going to draw another one. In fact, let me see if I can use offset this time. Yeah, so offset seems to be working for me this time. So notice what I do. If I just look at one of these squares I just drew, I click on offset, click on any of the lines of the boundary, and it allows me to create another square that's just offset from that one. Does that make sense?
So we're dimensioning the space between the lines, essentially?
Right. Yeah, I'm going to have to use the dimension tool to do that. But what this will do is it'll make sure that all 4 gaps are the same size.
Do we have a function for that?
For what?
Oh, wall thickness, yep.
Yeah, wall thickness.
Well, see, mine, yours has that model texturing to the image. Mine, when I selected generic steel, darkened it. When I did my
Oh,
colorway, I can see the thickness
Same exact thing.
is gray and the material is dark. And I'm kind of lining up my offset to that.
So that might be, you might be looking at a different surface than I'm looking at.
What do you mean?
Yeah, so
This one is the second square.
So
So
your
being inside
sketch
this
plane is not the same as my sketch plane.
Oh,
Your sketch plane, I think, is the inside of the tube, not the outside. Which should be fine in this case. It's not going to
That's not what I wanted.
So, but that's why it looks different.
The thing is, when I click on that, it doesn't give me the chance to put the material.
Oh yeah, so it's not automatically going to bring up the dimension. You've got to choose the dimension tool and then select. And then go away.
Thank you. Sure.
Okay, so I have all of the sides made wall thickness. And
Yeah, and notice I'm still not fully constrained, because I can still slide this back and forth. But in terms of the actual profile here, it is constrained, right? It's not going to change, but it can move left and right. And if you look down here, it says I need 2 dimensions. That's one dimension that tells me where this tube belongs, and another one that tells me where this tube belongs. Right, so those are my 2 dimensions that are still needed. I still need to do the inner walls of this one. So I'm going to do that now. And so I've got my 2 tube profiles. And now I want to figure out where to put them along the bench. So let's see, there are lots of ways to do that. I'm going to think about the best way to do it real quick.
oh, wait, you already duplicate your inside rectangle
My inside.
on the second one?
Yeah, I made the second.
Did you just make it by hand?
Yeah, I just did it the same way as the first one. Yeah, so I could have, there are lots of ways you could have done it, but because there were only 2 of them, it made sense to me to just draw a second one.
Because I couldn't figure out how to get the diagonals to show up right, I'm dimensioning all 4 sides of the outside.
That's fine. Yeah.
I'm not sure how to make it just do the 2.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure either without playing with your particular configuration. But yeah, I mean, this is just something that I think takes practice because of the way that Inventor guesses which constraints you want. Sometimes you'll need to sort through it and figure out which sometimes it'll guess constraints you don't want and you'll need to remove them. But it's usually pretty good at guessing the constraints that you want. Do you guys want another couple seconds to fool around, or? Yeah,
Almost.
some people
I'm
are.
up to where you are.
Okay, I'm gonna wait another 20 or 30 seconds and let you guys try to catch up a little.
Okay.
I can't offset.
It's not letting you use the offset command.
It's really far
So
back.
if you can't use the offset command like I couldn't before, I don't know why it wouldn't let me use it before, but you could just draw another rectangle inside it and constrain each of the sides individually. I think that's what Katie did.
Yeah.
So if you're not sure what I mean by that here, I'll show you. Right, so for example, if you had that first rectangle and it wouldn't let you offset it, you just had to draw another rectangle. You can just draw it however you want inside here. It doesn't matter because you're going to adjust these sides later. So you can go in and just.
When it's not drawing the rectangle.
I'll come take a look. I don't know why it wouldn't let you draw anything.
Well, it's black on black.
Oh, okay. Yes. There's. So rather than choosing the size of the inner one, what you want to do is you want to figure out the distance between the outer line and the inner line. So if you use the dimension tool,
Could you just, for the smaller rectangles you have inside the larger ones, can you just use the dimension tool to size those where you need to be?
so you could, but then you wouldn't be able to easily adjust the wall thickness later,
Oh,
which is how I'm trying to do it right now.
okay. Because I just use the dimensions.
Yeah, I mean it's fine if you definitely know what dimensions you want, then you can just choose the dimensions from the
Okay.
beginning.
Like that, and move my card.
Okay, fine. So it'd be 1.36. Because we're losing 1.2 from both sides, or 0.12 from both sides. So you've already created that dimension, so it's going to freak out if you try and make it other version. So you just want to click on this down here, and then you can edit it.
Well, this is the 1.38 that we need.
Right.
need to set.
You want it to be 1.36.
This. That'd be 1.26. Because if we're using 0.12 for either side, total is 0.24.
Yeah.
Because I don't want 3 out, stick the 12 line.
Yeah, I was only thinking about the one place value.
Just so absolutely possible.
That's okay.
To try. If I didn't get lost, that class over there. That would be.
Good.
Okay, I cannot, for some reason, it has attached itself to the left or the right.
Oh,
It's not centered.
that's bad news because we can't see all of your constraints. I don't know why that computer's doing that. So I would just delete that new one and start over. Oh, now we can see it. That's weird.
Yeah.
And they stack them up sometimes, so it's kind of hard to see which is which. But if you hover over the constraints, it'll tell you what they are. That's saying that it's parallel to this line. And there's another one underneath it, so if you can hover over just the one underneath it, without, So in any case, I would just delete that and start over.
Oh, you're saying just delete the
Yeah, just delete the inner rectangle and just make a new one. So what I would do is just draw a new rectangle inside, and don't worry about lining it up. Just draw it anywhere, and then what we're going to do is we're going to constrain the distance between the two lines. So just go to Dimension, and then click this line and this line, drag up, and then click left click. And then that'll give you that's the right one. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and then just do 0.12. And then do the same thing for each of the walls. Does that make sense? You can also drag it up if you can't see.
Now, when I try and do that with these, it usually comes up with. Now, that's the first time it usually comes up with over constraint.
Yeah, sometimes it'll over constrain it, but so you've already set that dimension right, between these two, but you need to do this one still. Yeah, so sometimes it's guessed other constraints, so it'll be over constraining, but other times it hasn't. So.
Awesome. That's pretty cool.
Okay, so that's the right profile.
Okay. And
Oh,
it doesn't want to slide. Because I know you can grab yours and
So it looks like it should be able to slide. So I think that's because you're still in the dimension tool. So I'm going to hit escape a couple of times. So now if you click on one of these, it should allow you to slide it left. Right? Yeah. We're going to constrain that in a second, so it won't be able to slide anymore. But for now, it is allowing you to slide it. Awesome. Okay, and we need 2 of those. So if you haven't made a second one, you can do that now.
Yeah, that was my second one. That wasn't my.
Okay. So now we need to space these out along here. What's that?
Because I have 2 of them.
You-
Yeah, they're just equidistant from the center. They're pretty far apart.
Yeah, so that's, I'm going to use one particular strategy for spacing them. It's not the only strategy, but I think it's a good one. So I want this tube, this tube, this tube, and this tube to be equally spaced. So what I'm going to do in order to do that, and I don't know if there's a better way to do it than this, but this is the way that I do it. I'm going to put in what are called construction lines between the tubes, and I'm going to force those construction lines to have the same length using the constraints, and that'll force them to be equally spaced. I mean, another option is I could just figure out what that length is, divide it by 3, and force them to be spaced in that way. But I prefer to use the equal distance thing because if I chose the length in advance and then I changed the length of the bench, it might get confused. Whereas if I tell it, you always need to be equally spaced, no matter what size I make the bench, it'll always equally space them. But in order to do that, I need to find the center points of these profiles. And in order to do that, I mean, there are probably, again, multiple ways to do it. But the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to use construction lines, and I'm going to draw crosses from corner to corner in each of these squares. So in order to do that, I click on construction here in the format section of the ribbon. So you can see construction is now highlighted. I'm going to click on line, and then I'm going to draw a line from corner to corner.
Larger or smaller?
It doesn't matter. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing for this one. Oops.
I think I did it.
And then do that for the ends?
I'm going to do that for the end one as well.
See, I just did it with 24 minus tube width.
Yeah, that's
You're gonna have
fine.
2 tube widths.
Yep, that's fine. So I'm having a little bit of trouble locking onto the corners here on my end tube. So in order to get access to those, what I'm going to do is I'm going to project the geometry from the solid part onto my sketch.
Oh, no.
So if I click on Project Geometry and then I hover over the lines, it'll add those lines onto my sketch. Did that make sense?
So wait,
So
what happens
I'll do it again.
if the line continues?
Which line?
The line, I've got all the 2 endpoints right now, the 2 end tubes, and it just, the line continued.
Yeah, I've got.
Now I have this out here.
Line too.
Oh, I see. Yeah, just hit Escape and it'll stop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've ended up with an extended line. I got my X's on all my squares,
Mhm.
but on my right hand end, I've got that line. Where is that?
That line is your, it's one
That's
of your
my
original. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
And when I increase when I change the zoom,
Mhm.
I end up partially with your material texture.
Yeah, I don't know what it's,
why it's doing
I don't know
it.
why it's doing that exactly.
Yeah, when it gets small, it's exactly like yours. If I go into it, it does a hodgepodge of color.
Huh.
It's like I told you when we started this, I'm gonna be that guy.
That's okay.
It just kind of follows me. And on my left-hand side, when I was doing putting the crosses in,
Uh-huh.
the furthest left dimension line is now green.
The furthest left dimension.
And the X is blue. So my X is on the inside, so green.
So I think that's probably, I don't know why mine are yellow and yours are green, but I think that's, oh, are yours construction lines or are yours?
No, the green ones that I'm referring to is in the tubing, the farthest left dimension line is green. My internal dimension lines are yellow. I don't know how I got that as green. These, because I put those lines in using this construction.
So that green is not a dimension line, that's just a regular line. But here's how you can get rid of it. It's just click on it and then click construction to change it to a construction. Yeah, so you actually want all of those crosses to be construction lines. I don't know why it switched. And so, yeah, so these are all now construction lines, but you want to also click on those ones, these ones, and add ones, and change them all to construction lines. Otherwise, Inventor's going to think that those need to become solid shapes.
Yeah, I just can't understand why it hasn't done that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Because I
why.
had it in construction when I was. I just said. So only the cross lines are to be construction.
Right, you still want these lines to be regular drawing lines.
Because that far left became a construction line. It didn't like that, but now it's back to being. So just the crosses I have now are the dotted construction.
Right. Yeah. So what that has done is it's created these intersections that are in the center of the those tubes. So it'll allow me to space my stuff. So I'm going to use just a few more construction lines, and I'm going to connect them between each of these points. So I'm going to have one construction line that goes from the end tube to this intersection, like that. I'm going to create another construction line that goes from that point to the next intersection. I'm going to create a third
Should
construction
they be different
line.
lines, or should they all be the same line?
They should be 3 separate lines.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I'm going to make another line. I mean, they'll all be in line with each other, so you won't be able to tell that they're 3 separate segments, but they need to be separate segments.
So you get to the first, you go from the end tube to the first tube, then you go to the center, or do you go to the next tube?
Then you go from the first tube to the second tube, and then from the second tube to the end. So what I have right now is this construction line from the edge to the first one, this one between the two, and then this one from the second one to the end. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to force those to all be equal lengths. And I'm going to do that with this equal geometric constraint right here. So if I click on that, right, so that's the equal constraint, and then I click on 2 of the lines, it'll force those 2 lines to be equal.
Whoa, that didn't work.
And then I'm going to do it again to make another 2 of the lines equal. And that forces all 3 of these lines
That's
to
just
be
threw
equal.
2 of these off.
So let me take a look at what's happened on yours.
So these 2 lines right here. See one and see one.
So you want those to be equal. So you click equal, and click on
That one and this one.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
Okay, so I think what happened is this construction line wasn't frozen at this corner point.
Okay.
So the way I forced it to be stuck on that corner point was by creating these construction lines around that tube and then constraining it to that corner point.
Oh.
So even though yours maybe looked like it was right on that corner, it wasn't actually constrained on the corner. So when you tried to force it to be equal, it just moved everything
Okay.
away.
So should I put those construction lines in now, or?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah. And the way you do that is you project the geometry. So you use this button here, project geometry.
Project geometry. Okay.
And then make sure you've got construction highlighted.
Yeah, I do.
And then when you hover over that border, it'll allow you to project it onto the current sketch, right? So for example, I'm going to project one onto this.
Well, hold on. I'm just confused now because for some reason this isn't working right. I've got 2 lines, but they extend all the way down.
Hey, I have been so lost for a while. I told Tony I have a 3 o'clock job interview today.
No problem. Good luck.
So you all have a good weekend.
Because I've got the project geometry, but
For me?
it's got these white lines extending all the way down.
Yeah, that's okay. But you actually want the, here, can you zoom in a little bit on this? So you want to click on the top here.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah. And it's okay that it extends all the way.
Okay.
Yeah, just so now it's created that construction line there. Then you want to click on the outer edge, and then bottom one. Yeah. So now these are in line with those edges, and now you want to constrain this line so that the end is constrained with that.
All right. So. Is it going to
Yeah, that's the one.
So when this lands to this right here.
Yeah.
The construction line on that.
So maybe it's already solved the problem just by
Okay.
adding those lines in. So let's see what happens. I'm baffled by that. I don't know why it's not letting me do that. I'm not really sure what to do. It's
Not either.
I'm not sure what's happened, but I'm afraid that troubleshooting it might take too long. I'm about done with this section of the tutorial anyway. So why don't you just watch what I do?
Okay.
I don't know how to figure out what's going on there. Okay, so anyway, on mine, I've fully constrained these. I've made them equally spaced. So I'm actually done with my sketch. So see, I've got this thing. It's fully constrained. So I'm going to say finish the sketch. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude these profiles, which are my tube cross sections, to this front one to make up all that space. So this time I am just going to use the extrude tool. And I'm going to choose that profile. I'm also going to choose this profile. So it's going to extrude them both at the same time. And I could put in the length of the extrusion, right? I could calculate that. But the easiest way to do it is if I open up this extrude menu. And this thing here is called the extents. Right? You can choose the distance, but you can also choose other ways of choosing how far to extrude it. And I'm going to go 2, and then I'm going to choose this other face. So I'm going to rotate around, and I'm going to click on this face, and that will extrude right until I get there. You could also have chosen 2 next, and it'll just go until it runs into something, which in this case it would have just run into that. Either one would produce the same effect. So I've extruded it, and now I've created this structure that's made out of those tubes. And these are equally spaced here.
Okay, now since we put that there, now I finished my sketch. I didn't constrain where because my spacing is off. But I can go back in and change that.
You can
We'll
make
adjust everything.
That's right. You can change that at any time. Yeah.
2 thumbs up. Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm not worried.
So yeah. So I can still change anything about this sketch. So that's one of the miraculous things about Inventor is that you can go back and change stuff you chose at the very beginning, and as long as it doesn't create some sort of geometric paradox, it'll just regenerate the whole sketch to have your new thing, right? So let's say, for example, I've changed my mind and I want to use smaller tubing, right? I can just go into my parameters. Even though I chose my tubing stuff a long time ago, and I'm going to make this maybe 1-inch tubing, right? Even though I've done all this design based on it, I just change that to 1 inch, click done, and it just changes my whole model so that I've got 1-inch tubing. And that's nice because if I run a simulation on this and I find out that 1-inch tubing isn't good enough, I can just go back and change it back to 1.5-inch tubing, regenerate my model, and then I can run another simulation to see if that's good enough. Okay, so this is going to be the frame that the stuff's going to sit on. And that's pretty much it for building the frame, right? So, so this part is now done. I didn't do something that I told you should do at the beginning. I said you should save often, and then I didn't do it. I've just been distracted. So I'm going to go ahead and save it now.
Should I save this because it's not complete?
You can save it. Yeah, that's fine. Right? I should have been saving all along. One thing that's true is if you're in an active sketch, it won't let you save. But if you try and save it, it'll just give you a prompt that says you can't save when you've got a sketch active. Do you want to close the sketch or whatever? But in any case, I'm going to call this the seat frame. And so I've saved it as a part file. And now later when I make the assembly, I can insert this frame into the assembly. Okay, so I'm going to make one more part right now, and then probably call it a day. So the next part I'm going to make is the seat top. right? The part we actually sit on. So that's going to be really easy to make. That's just going to take a minute. So I'm going to create a new part. So I'm going to go up to this big eye in the corner, go to New, and then go down to Part. Did you guys follow along? Yeah. So that's going to create a new part. So I've got this blank workspace again. Now notice down at the bottom I've got these two tabs, but I can still go back and look at my seat frame if I want by clicking on that tab. But here, this is my new part. And I'm going to do the right thing this time. I'm going to save right away before I've even sketched anything. And I'm going to name this seat. Yeah, I'll just call it seat. OK. Now, what I could do is...
Is this a new project?
New part.
This is a new part, but it's still in the same project. But you want all of your parts to be associated inside the same project. And this, everything you make without closing Inventor now will automatically be put in the same project file. You don't need to go back and choose the project again. In fact, unless you restart the computer, even if you close Inventor and open it again, it'll automatically default to this project that you've currently chosen. OK, so I've got this. Now, I know the dimensions for my seat. So I could just re-enter them here in the parameter thing. But there's another way to do it. What I can do is I can actually link this part to that other part, and then pull the parameters out of that part. So I can just reference those parameters. And then if I change them in that other part, it'll automatically update it into this part. So that's probably the best way to do it. So if you click link here, it's going to bring up an open dialog box.
Wait, where was that?
Underneath
add numeric. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And it automatically looks for an Excel file. So there's two ways that you can deal with parameter management. One way is you can build an Excel file and keep all of your parameters in that and reference the same file. And I like to do that, but I'm not doing it right now because it takes a long time to set it up. So you have to change the type of file to Inventor files. And then you can choose seat frame from the list and click open. And it'll bring up a list of all the parameters from that other file. And this seat doesn't need access to all the parameters from the old one. It really only needs the bench width and the bench depth. So I'm going to click on those two circles next to bench width and bench depth. It brings up a little warning. I don't actually know what that warning means.
Is that OK?
But I just say OK. Right? And so I get these little plus signs next to bench width and bench depth. I'm also going to bring in the bracket depth for now, because I might want it later. You can always go back and link to additional parameters at any time, but I'm just going to link to those three right now. And then hit OK. And now see, inside my parameters, those three have been added. So now I can reference them by name.
Let me see. Errors occurred. So we'll try again.
All right.
Where did you save it?
So you want generic files? Generic files. Seat frame.
You have just these two?
Yep.
Boy, I needed this.
That's weird.
Yeah, that is weird. I don't know why it's doing that.
I think you just hates them.
I think there's just something confused in your old file. So what I would do in this case is, rather than referencing these, just type them in. Just make new parameters.
Right.
Or you can just type them in by their length.
And it'll still have the old ones in there, right?
So this is a completely new part file. So
Okay, here we go. It already has bench depth in there. So that's
okay, so it's there? Okay. Yeah, Inventor is a
one
buggy
inch. Is that
program.
right?
It does a lot of
Yeah,
weird
does that
stuff.
happen? Okay, I was wrong.
once I've got those things linked in, I just.
Oh, no, I made it, and
Oh,
I'm
okay.
trying to find it.
What's that?
Once I get those dimensions in there, just hit done.
Yep, hit done. Yeah, and now when I make my seat top, I can just reference bench width and bench depth, and it'll automatically know how big to make that.
What were those again?
What's that?
The depth and length.
72 and 22.
Oh, right, thanks. Okay.
Okay. So my seat top is just going to be a big rectangular piece of sheet steel. So it's going to be pretty straightforward to make. I'm going to click on this XZ plane again, because that's the sort of the horizontal plane. And I'm going to draw a rectangle onto that plane. So this time I do probably want to use just the 2-point rectangle tool, which I think is probably the default one when you open it up. And then I'm going to click on the center point and then start dragging off to the side. And I could click and then go back and change my dimensions, but the easiest way to do it is instead of clicking, I can just immediately start typing in my dimensions. See how this top 1.913 is highlighted? So that's going to be my bench width. So I'm just going to type bench width, and it references. You could make it centered, but it doesn't matter. You're going to place it in the assembly anyway, so where it is here doesn't make a difference. So I type in bench width. It knows how big that is. I'm going to hit Tab, and that'll bring me to the other dimension. And I'm going to type bench depth. Hit Enter, and now I've got a rectangle that is 72 inches long and 22 inches deep, just like my frame. Any questions so far? Seem okay? Okay, so so now I'm going to extrude this, and I'm going to extrude it whatever the width of my metal is going to be. So I'm going to finish the sketch. I'm going to click Extrude, and it automatically defaults to a 1-inch extrusion, but it's definitely not going to be 1 inch thick. That would be quite a hefty bench. For now, I'm just going to guess that it's going to have the same thickness as the tubing. So that was 11 gauge tubing, which was 0.12 inches. So I'm going to call this the seat thickness. And that's going to equal 0.12. Hit Enter, and it has extruded that.
Oh, yeah. So seat thickness.
So now I've got the seat thickness, right? You can name it anything you want. You don't even have to name it if you don't want to. But I like to name it so that I can reference it later.
Hey,
Yeah.
I don't want to break this up by any means, but do you know how much longer you're going to be gone?
I was planning on making this be my last little bit, so 5 more minutes maybe.
Okay, another 5, and then, yeah, so just check in with Matt and Katie.
Yeah, Matt's thing's supposed to start at 2, so that's 19
And I'm
minutes.
flexibly available.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, thanks, Tom.
So wait, how do I call it seat thickness? Because now it has it at 0.12.
Here, let me go back. So so I click on Extrude, and then here in the underneath distance, I'm going to type seat thickness, and then equals, and then whatever my size is going to be. Right. So all that does is it names the dimension,
Okay.
so that I can reference it later.
What thickness did we give it again? 1/4 inch?
0.12. So that's 11 gauge metal. But again, the reason that I've named it and used the parameters to do it is because I can go back now and make it something else if I want to. But I think 11 gauge will be a pretty good seat. So now I've got a seat. Again, this is made out of the default material, which doesn't have any material properties. So I'm going to change that to steel as well. and now it's made of steel.
Yay.
Yay. So again, I'm going to save this. Say OK. And now I've got the seat top and the frame that it's going to go on. And what you would do, I'm not going to do it now, is you'd make another file that's called an assembly type file, and you would put these together in the assembly file. But I'm going to call it a day for now because we've been at it for a while. I'm sure that people's ADD is starting to catch up to them. Mine is. So, are there any questions before we take it?
Is there a time I can do this again, like just to see if it's gonna work this time?
Is there time for you to do it again?
Or like, would there be a chance for me to see if I can actually get this to work?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Inventor's not all the computers here, so Matthew's going to have a session on using Illustrator in like 15 minutes in this room. So you might want to use the hub computers, or you can just ignore him, whichever works for you.
Seriously, this is gonna be the great irony. It's like my knowledge of Illustrator is like, I don't know,
So do you
so
want
novice.
me to do it?
I can talk about what I've done.